right, Gordon talked about this last week. How many times must you forgive? A lot. Yes. This is called One More Time. 1, 2, 3, 4. How many times must you forgive someone? One more time. How many times must you forgive someone? One more time. How many times must you forgive someone? One more time. Every time it comes up, one more time. You know, Jesus said, forgive not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Just for the record, that's 490 times. Who's counting? Judge not, lest ye be judged. Condemn not, you won't be condemned. Forgiveness must be overflowing. Makes you whole again. How many times must you forgive yourself? One more time. How many times must you forgive yourself? One more time. How many times must you forgive yourself? One more time. Every time it comes up, one more time. Remove the blocks of resentment and allow the good to flow. Forgive others for the hurt they caused you and let the anger go. Forgiveness is the answer, makes what's broken whole. Let the old wounds heal, take care of your soul. Forgive with all your heart in the peace of prayer. Let go of hurt and shame. Let all resentment dead. Turn negative into positive. The healing powers are real. Release all unforgiveness. Forgiven, you are healed. How many times must you forgive someone? One more time. How many times must you forgive someone? One more time. How many times must you forgive someone? One more time. Every time it comes up, every time someone does you wrong, every time it comes up, one more time. One more time. One more time.
Wow, thank you. I cannot wait till Music Sunday on July 30th. The music team is going to be doing the whole service. I can't wait. Can you? No. All right. Thank you, guys. Well, today we wrap up our 2-Sunday series on the art or the power of forgiveness. It is a power and it is an art. And we've been looking more at the art part of it. What's the real practice? What's the deep way we do it? This, of course, is based on 2 books, actually, by the Reverend Dr. Charlotte Manning. And it could also be about freedom, because we cannot be free until we have released our attachment to the past. That doesn't mean we forget the past. We can't. That's not even possible. But we can release the energetic hold it has over us. And that's what this whole series is about. So we start, as we began last week, with understanding what it is that really, truly needs to be forgiven. On the surface, we forgive each other, we forgive ourselves. But ultimately, what needs to be forgiven is the cause of the events and the experiences that put us in that place to begin with. And that is recognizing our fears. Because anytime we feel wrong or put upon, anytime we do something to put upon others, every single time, I promise you, you can trace it back, if you go deep, to something that has caused you to fear something that causes you to fear emotionally, intellectually, sometimes physically. But what is it? And that's what forgiveness is about. It's about breaking that bond. Those of you who were here last week, remember that Michael insulted my shirt. It was set up. If you weren't here, it wasn't, it was a setup. It was a skit. But he insulted my shirt, and I tied the rock around my ankle. And what was supposed to happen is I was supposed to walk around dragging the rock to symbolize that when we are attached to heavy thoughts, heavy energy from the past, it's as if we are dragging around a big rock. The rock chose not to cooperate. It was an enlightened rock. But the point is, forgiveness is about cutting that cord that binds us to the past. We also looked at the history of forgiveness. And what it is the release of that energy. And then we looked at how we forgive. What are some steps we can use? Well, the first is to identify what truly needs to be forgiven. Identify the person, the event, and forgive it. But then go deep, identify the cause. The cause. I can promise you something in our past, every one of us, causes us to act the way we do and do the things we do and say the things we do. And we get triggered. And then we have to either ask for forgiveness or forgive somebody else. But what we have to do then is forgive whatever happened in the past. Parents, teachers, grandparents, family, ministers, the kid down the street, whatever it might be, something is there. And it's not simply what that person did or said. It was how what was said or did connected to something else in your experience. And sometimes it's even in our very DNA. It could be trauma from our parents or grandparents that has been passed down without us even knowing it. So once we have identified the root cause, then we can begin to let it go. We can release that attachment. We can say, oh, that's what that was about? Well, that was then. It is no more. It stops here. And because, as we learned, those things that cause us the need to forgive are the results of our fears, our fear of rejection, disapproval, ego, getting crushed. And it's never as easy as it sounds. The truth is those root causes may have many levels. And so as we work on them, we're constantly bringing new awarenesses. We were doing a class, not on forgiveness, on something else during the Acts to Revelation class, and somebody said, oh my God, it's like an onion. There's always another layer. Well, forgiveness is the same way. There's always another layer. How many of you remember the movie Jurassic Park, the original? There was a wonderful kind of tongue-in-cheek scene in that movie, kind of tongue-in-cheek, where they're being chased by the T-Rex. And Jeff Goldblum's in the Jeep, and I forget the other guy's name. He's driving, and there's a shot where it's showing the T-Rex chasing them in the rearview mirror, and it says, objects in mirror may be closer than you know. Closer than they seem. That's the way our fears are. Oftentimes, they're closer than they seem. They're sometimes right under the surface, especially as we're beginning to work on the healing process, because we're constantly bringing them up to be healed. So they may be closer than they seem. And that's actually good news, for it makes it easier for us to address those fears. If they're still buried deep down in the subconscious, we can't address them. We're not aware of them. So rejoice. If your fears are bubbling up, rejoice, for that is the opportunity to work on them. Well, how do we do that? Well, Charlotte Manning says, like every unity minister on the planet, she was a unity minister, said, meditate, meditate, meditate. Meditate, meditate, meditate. And then meditate, meditate, meditate. Now, don't spend your whole life meditating, but take time to make a regular practice of meditation. Because what it does is it opens up our subconscious. What it does, it allows for an infilling of the power and the strength and the wisdom to effectively address those fears, effectively recognize them, effectively trace them back to their source. And it also allows us to move past them, to leave them behind. You know, one technique that Reverend Charlotte Manning talked about was a little technique she had of imagining that she had a car. So close your eyes and do this with me if you're comfortable doing that. Imagine you have a car and it's a see-through car. It can be any color you want, any model you want. It can be a truck, a sports car, a four-door, a motorcycle, doesn't matter. Convertible, compact. Design the perfect vehicle of your choosing. And know that regardless of color or anything, you have the power and the ability to see through it, to see what's outside of it. Now sit in the driver's seat. Imagine yourself getting in there. Put your hands on the steering wheel and look around you. Look around you outside the car. And as you look, you can visualize your fear all around you. Might be in the form of people. Might be in the form of events. But see it. Now take the steering wheel in your hands. Start the car. Put it in gear. And begin to move slowly forward. Don't want to floor it. We want everybody to have a chance to get out of the way. And now as you begin to pick up speed, look behind you. And that which had you surrounded is becoming smaller and smaller as you pull away until they are no longer in sight. Take a breath. Put your car in park. Shut it off and open your eyes. Don't want anybody driving away still. That's one technique we can use. It takes a little deeper work than that, but that's a visualization to begin to move past it. The next step is realizing something very important. What fear really is. Now, we've all heard the acronyms. I've forgotten. Future events appearing real or false events appearing real. But there's another reality about fear. Fear can become possibility. Fear can become possibility. Going back to Christian tradition, think about Jesus before the crucifixion. Do you think he was afraid? I promise you, on a human level, he was, but there was a possibility of finally realizing and demonstrating that nothing can stop us. You see, ego is continually attacking our peace of mind so that it can remain in control of our thinking. And fear creates harassing thoughts and doubt. And we go into fight or flight mode. But instead of reacting, which is what happens when we are triggered by something or someone, and we react something that happened in the past. We react the way we handled it in the past. Or we can respond, which means I now engage it with responsibility. The responsibility of, I don't have to do the same thing again. I don't have to react in the same way again. And so instead of fight or flight, not repeating what we already have done, we can face the fear and ask it, what am I truly afraid of? What am I truly afraid of? Is it what I am focusing on in the moment? Or is it something deeper? And it will always be something deeper. Unless you're standing in front of a bus barreling down on you. Okay, that's a different kind of fear. That's a different level. It will always be something deeper. I love what Charles Fillmore wrote in the book Prosperity. Fear is the great breeder of poverty, for it breaks down positive thoughts, and negative thoughts bring negative conditions and reactions in their train. The poverty he's speaking of is not just economic poverty, although that is the real root cause of our poverty in our world today. The fear that if everybody has enough, there won't be enough left for me. Number one cause. There's plenty of everything we need for everybody to live in safety and dignity. But to go on with Charles Fillmore's idea, poverty is poverty of spirit, poverty of boldness, poverty of positive thinking, poverty of health, poverty of relationships, poverty of peace. So he goes on to write, a thought of fear will stop even the flow of energy in some nerve center deep in the body, forming a nucleus where other fears may accumulate and dam up the flow of life energy. It has been scientifically proven that fear, whether it be a conscious fear or a subconscious fear, causes problems physically in the body. It disrupts the flow of life energy. Charles went on, an impact of energy is necessary then to break the dam. And there are many ways to send energy to the blockage. Guess what the first one he said was? Meditation. I'm going to be doing a Be Well series, I think in 2 months, called Medication or Meditation. There is room for both, but ultimately we want to be free. So, meditation, massage, exercise, even electricity. Remember, this was written in the early days of electricity. But those are temporary remedies. Not one of them has touched the real cause, which is mental. Everything starts in mind. Everything. And it may be the mind replaying tapes of past events that we need to forgive. It may be the mind saying, you can do better than this. But everything starts in the mind. One of the great examples of this is a demonstration of the power of faith as told in the story in Matthew 14:22, where Peter walks on the water with Jesus. It's an allegory of this exact thing we are talking about. To refresh your memory, Matthew 14. Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. Now, I promise you, Jesus didn't go, you're dismissed, go away, go away. He probably spent more time talking and let the disciples go on ahead of him. And after he had dismissed them, he went up on a mountainside by himself to pray. He always did that after he taught. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from land, buffeted by the waves because of the wind that was against it. Now let's kind of unpack that metaphysically a little bit. Jesus made the disciples get into a boat. What are disciples metaphysically? They are our higher spiritual thoughts. People always represent thought metaphysically. So disciples, gurus, whatever, those are higher spiritual thoughts. The boat, of course, is our consciousness. And he sent them on ahead. Christ sent them on ahead. But as they were going on ahead, the wind picked up. And the wind was against them, and the boat was pitching. And they became afraid. Now, I've always questioned this a little bit because Peter, for crying out loud, was a fisherman. You can't tell me he had never been out on that sea in rough waters before. But they were tossed and turned and very afraid. And of course, Jesus represents the Christ consciousness. And the winds that were against him represent our interpretation of the world around us, which so often is against us because we think, oh, everything out there, the economy, the crime, the homelessness, the weather, the you name it, is against me. And that is not the truth. You are in it, but you are in a boat with high spiritual thoughts. Our fear makes us forget it. So shortly before dawn, Jesus comes walking out to them on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. There's the fear again. We're even terrified of the Christ Spirit because it's like overwhelming. Oh, wow, there it is. Oh my gosh, it can't be good. They were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, take courage. It is I. Have you ever noticed how the great spiritual beings in these stories from every tradition always have to start with fear not? Every angel has to say, fear not. Jesus had to say, don't be afraid, it's me. Take courage. And Peter replied, Lord, if it's you, tell me to come to you on the water. He said, all right, come, Peter. And Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came toward Jesus. Peter represents faith. Faith focused on our Christ energy without paying attention to what's going on around us, without buying into the waves and the wind, can walk on water, can rise above it. But what happens? Like Peter, we too often shift our focus because we've been in this world so long and we've been immersed in a society that tells us, look at the waves, look at the wind, it's going to get you. Turn on the news. It's all about what you should be afraid of today. I swear they ought to change the name to the Fear of the Day Club, or now Fears of the Day. And so we put our attention on that. And of course, what happened to Peter? He sank. We sink back in to that experience. And of course, Jesus didn't really want him to drown. I mean, after all, he was like the number one disciple. So he reaches in and pulls him out. And he says, you of little faith, why did you doubt? We think about that phrase, you of little faith, but we forget the second part. Why did you doubt? He was saying, you of little faith, that's all the faith you needed, was a little bit. Why did you doubt? The moment doubt kicked in, you sank. So as I said, in this story, the disciples are our higher thoughts, the boat is our consciousness, the waves are our doubts and fears. Jesus, of course, is the Christ Spirit, and Peter is the power of faith, that when focused on the truth, the Christ within us is able to rise above the storms, to rise past the appearances. And that is what we must do, is connect to our own indwelling Christ. When we can do that, then we can look at the root causes of our fears, the storms that are constantly churning in us, just waiting for something in the present moment to trigger them. And we can say, no, my focus is on my Christ Spirit. My focus is on the truth of God within me. My focus is on truth with a capital T, and I will not sink back into that. That's what forgiveness is. It is seeing the truth of our fears and not the appearances so that we can let go of the attachment to them. Let go of the old ideas that these waves and wind are going to sink us and instead walk in a new light. I'd like to share with you another story. This is an allegorical story. Once upon a time, I love ones that start like that. Once upon a time, in a small village nestled by a shimmering lake lived a young girl named Lily. She was known for her compassionate heart and wise demeanor, despite her tender age. However, Lily had a secret fear that had plagued her for as long as she could remember. The dark, mysterious forest that loomed beyond the village. She had heard stories from her parents and the village elders of the wicked, evil animals that called on cell phones that walked amongst the forest, and how they had big claws and teeth, and the trees were twisted and gnarled. But one day, curiosity got the better of Lily, and she mustered the courage to venture just a foot into the forbidden forest. And yes, it was dark and scary, but nothing happened. She said, okay. Took a breath and stepped more into the forest and more, under the canopy of the ancient trees. And as she did so, a cold shiver ran down her spine, and the eerie silence in the twisted branches cast long, haunting shadows around her. But she persevered. With each step, fear gripped her heart tighter and tighter. And she began running. But she began running into the forest, not out of it, knowing that there was something to be discovered. She hurried deeper and deeper, hoping to discover the source of her terror. Until finally she stumbled on a peculiar, worn-out book laying on the forest floor. Its pages were weathered and yellowed, revealing the weight of time. She picked it up and opened the book and discovered a tale about a forgotten creature, the guardian of the forest. The story spoke of the guardian's painful past, filled with betrayal and abandonment. Unable to cope with its anguish, the creature turned the forest into a manifestation of its own fear and anger. Reading this, Lily's fear began to transform into empathy. She realized that her own fear of the forest stemmed from the unresolved pain of the guardian and the stories that had been spread about it. Determined to help, she set out to find the creature and offer her forgiveness. Navigating through the labyrinthine paths, Lily finally stumbled upon the guardian, a majestic being with emerald green eyes and a sorrowful demeanor. With trembling hands, she spoke softly, expressing her understanding and forgiveness. As the words left her lips, the guardian's eyes shimmered with a glimmer of hope. It had longed for redemption, for someone to acknowledge its pain. And slowly, the forest around them began to change. Twisted branches straightened, and the air filled with tranquility. And over time, the guardian's fears resolved, replaced by gratitude and love. The forest, once a source of terror, was transformed into a sanctuary of beauty and harmony. Animals returned, birds sang, and flowers bloomed in vibrant colors. Who was the guardian? Anybody know? Our own ego. That part of us that is designed to protect us at all costs. And so our job is to recognize that. Forgive it, and teach it to let go. So how do we do that? Well, the first step, as we saw in the allegory, was curiosity. What's really in that forest? What's really down in me? What is it that triggers my reactions? Be curious about the fears you have. Be curious about their causes, and then take the journey of discovery. Feel the emotions as you search your paths of subconscious. And it's okay to be afraid. Remember the words of Franklin Roosevelt, courage is not the absence of fear, but rather the assessment that something else is more important than the fear. That something else is your own peace, your own comfort, your own awakening, your own brilliance. You will eventually find the guardian, your subconscious ego, and those memories. Embrace them with understanding and forgiveness. If it was a parent, minister, relative, teacher, whatever, sibling, understand that they too had their fears and reactions. And then watch what begins to happen in your life and your experiences. For you are a mighty being. Do you realize that? We are mighty beings, every human. Can you say that out loud? I am a mighty being. Oh, that sounded almost mighty. I am a mighty being. Living in the present that God gave to me. Very good. Say that repeatedly until you begin to really internalize it, until you can feel the very souls of your body vibrating with it, until it impacts your consciousness and your thinking. For your I am, that's your name as God. I am. Moses asked God, what is your name? Who shall I say sent me? I am that I am. I am is your name of God. So, I am Gordon. I am Joe. I am Fred. I am Susie. I am Lucy. I am all of you. I am. And your I am, your true self, has the strength and the power of a superwoman or a superman, or both. Remember, to forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. Forgiveness does not change the past, but it does enlarge the future. We are meant to have life and have it what? Abundant. You guys do that so good. The Buddha showed the way to how to have life abundantly, to let go of attachment to those fears and those old messages that hold us back. forgive them. Jesus took it further and said, forgive 70 times 7. Forgive the past. Break the chains of energy that bind you to it, and you will have life abundantly. Namaste.
We all have a weakness. Some of ours are easy to identify. Look me in the eye and ask for forgiveness. We'll make a pact to never speak that word again. Yes, you are my friend. We all have something that digs at us. At least we dig each other. So when weakness turns my ego up, I know you'll count on the me from yesterday. If I turn into another, dig me up from under what is covering the better part of me. Sing this song. Remind me that we'll always have each other when everything else is gone. All have a sickness. It cleverly attaches and it multiplies. No matter how we try, we all have someone that digs at us. At least we dig each other. So when sickness turns my ego up, I know you'll act as a clever medicine. If I turn into another, dig me up from under what is covering the better part of me. Sing this song. Remind me that we'll always have each other when everything else is gone. Oh, each other when everything else is gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Hey, I see kids back there.